So it is the 22nd of July, and Cassana's will has already been added into the game. This was a little sooner than Vorian and Sorara's wills were released after their update notices when they were first added. And now we're starting to see a lot of these top-end accounts unlock her. And the question will now be exactly how good is she, obviously, and exactly how does she work in reports. So first of all, if you're thinking of buying this in terms of cost, I did a video on this previously with Vorian's Will. You're going to be looking at somewhere between 30 and 40,000 black diamonds. So it's less efficient than stuff like Black Friday discounts or Treasure Hunt, but these commanders are not going to be in Black Friday sales realistically, and definitely aren't available in those selection chests yet. So if you want to now, this is going to be the only way you can get her. I'd look at somewhere in the region of 36,000 black diamonds as a rough cost just to gold her. You'll then need the 600 legendary awakening tokens on top of that as well. So super expensive, very niche in terms of who will actually be able to have access to her. Then we move over to her herself. So up here are all her stats. She has no leadership in the Tavern, and she takes Dessert as her preferred item. She has, I think, 4-star combat rate by default, and that will go up to 5-star if you have her at 2-star. Her Awakening ability is listed down here on the left. I've already been over this roughly in the update video I made, so we'll just go through exactly how each line of this works in reports. So the first bit at the start of the battle, Cassana performs prayer for 2 seconds, during which allied commanders are under silence. So the way this read was Salma anti-synergy. When you look in reports, you see here I have Cassana there and Salma there. At 1 second, first thing that happens is Cassana silences, and then Salma's awakening ability procs. But obviously, since everything is silenced, none of those Salma active abilities cast. So you can't exploit that for extra snowball. You can't double up on Salma and Cassana actives. That was to be expected. Past that is where it gets a bit interesting. So we have the 2-second reduction to those female commander active cooldowns. I have at the bottom here all the active timings, which I'll go over at the end. But this last bit was what I held off on commenting on in that update video because I wasn't exactly sure how it worked. So additionally, allied female commanders immediately cast active army skills 1 time on enemies in the front column. So this just seemed exactly the same as Salma. But then it said damage coefficient 200% reduced by 50% for each additional target hit. Didn't really understand what that meant at the time. When looking reports, it's quite easy to see what it means. So you see here 3 seconds. That's when the silence ends. They're silenced at the 1st and 2nd seconds. And as soon as that silence ends, Cassana causes them all to instant cast their actives. So the first active that casts here is Cersei. Cersei Lannister targeted ally A4, B4, C4, and D4 lineup. So these instant cast actives from Cassana actually hit all lineups, which means there's even more AoE damage there added into female. So the damage coefficient 200%, what that means is say you have 310% commander damage coefficient, that will actually multiply that by 2, up to 620% commander damage coefficient. So look here, Cassana targeted enemy A5 lineup. Enemy lost about 17,000 spearmen, and that triggers Layla to reproc it. And then when it hits again, it hits for exactly half the damage, pretty much, as it hit the first time. So what that means is the first cast is doing double damage, and then any reprocs are back to just normal 100% standard damage after that. So compared to Salma doing the instant cast actives, these are hitting harder. Salma with 4-star weapon actually has 150% damage coefficient on this, but this is 50% higher than that. So they're hitting harder, and they're doing AoE damage. In monotype situations, so say like UT, I have seen some people sharing reports from UT saying Cassana is somewhat underwhelming, and I do get that. But because of this, Cassana's really going to shine in AoE situations. So think attacking someone's castle with 4 troop types, or soloing an AC where there aren't perfect monotype reinforcements on a castle. That is where Cassana is really going to shine. I mean, you can just look at this report here. It's killing hundreds of thousands of second and third row troops just from this effect alone. So none of these hundreds of thousands of troops would have been touched without Cassana. And just this third second alone, Cassana herself is killing over 1 million troops more than Salma would have in the exact same position. So for all the cries of Cassana is underwhelming, killing over 1 million troops by herself in 1 second is not underwhelming. It's just quite a niche situation where that max value is actually going to be seen. This reduced by 50% for each additional target. I think I'm not 1,000% sure on this because it's kind of weird reading these reports. Is say here, A4 would take 200% damage, then B4 would take 150%, C4 100%, and D4 50%. Some of the numbers in the reports I've received are a bit awkward to get 100% confirmation on that, but there are factors like different troop tiers and health on the different lines, which is skewing the losses, because you would expect correlation of losses by the maths of 2, 1.51, and then 0.5, but the troop numbers, the troop tiers and stuff don't necessarily enable it. But I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Alternatively, if it isn't how it works, it probably is just referring to this bit here where just the Layla reprocs do half damage because they go back to normal. But yeah, huge AoE damage potential from Cassana. And if you start getting wildfire procs, your Danny Dragon effect is going to be hitting at 1 second. You can just absolutely nuke someone in those first few seconds of the fight before they can even touch you. But a lot of that potential is lost if it's monotype v monotype, which I think is where some of this dissatisfaction is coming from. Because if you're attacking someone in, say, mono infantry, you're just not getting any of the benefits out of this stuff here. Then going back to the cooldown reduction on the actives, I have the active timings against rebel groups at least listed here. So you'll have 5 active casts from Cassana, Layla, Cersei, and Sanel, and then 8 active casts from Daenerys. That is a total of 28 active casts. If you have 4-star Layla weapon, that goes up to 54.32, which is very high. That number, if you want to fact check my maths, is from this here. I've said this in previous videos, but I'm sure people haven't watched all of them. Some of the stuff I did back in early 2023, I think it was based off this formula, which was flawed. Unfortunately, you can't go back and edit videos, which is slightly annoying. Yeah, on those old guides, what I had down for Sonara and Layla weapon was a bit high. But is this number here, about 1.94 times the active casts on average. So you're getting, what, about 11 wildfires a fight, which is pretty decent. Daenerys is going crazy with her disarms, with how often this is casting. And that is pretty much it in terms of actual report analysis you can do on this, to be honest. It's a lot shorter than the equivalent video I did on Vorian, where it was just so bloated and there was so much to touch on. I was trying to test against Rebels and in the RTS game modes and that as well, though. I do get where people are coming from in terms of saying that she's a bit disappointing. I do think, though, a lot of people who are saying that are judging it from UT, because it's only been released for 17 hours at this point. There's very few people in the game who actually have this or have been put in situations to test it. We haven't been able to test it in AC or CCS or anything like that, obviously. If you're testing it in UT and you're comparing it to like Vorian's bleed ability, you're getting almost 12,000% damage coefficient just from that one line. It is pretty bad, to be honest. But then when you're getting in these situations where you can hit multiple lines with those 3-second active casts, her damage really spikes from that. So it's quite fitting for the female synergy, and it maintains that same problem it had before where it's much better as an offensive synergy than a defensive synergy. So say you're defending a castle in AC, pretty much everyone is going to be sending monotype rallies at you, so you're not going to be getting benefits out of this stuff. Any non-cav troops are going to ruin your commander damage. It isn't fixing that problem. So in terms of being a building holder in AC, cav will probably still be fairly bad compared to those min-maxed Vorian and Sorara lineups. But offensively, for soloing in AC, for soloing in world map PvP, for rallying in world map PvP, she will be very, very good because of this AoE damage on the instant cast actives. And I haven't even really touched on the Cav versus Spear damage increase at all in this video, which goes such a long way to making you more resistant against Spear players. Especially in AC, it's been somewhat meta in recent seasons to run double line weakness as building holders. If there's, say, Spear Cav, Spear Inf, you're going to perform so much better against those lineups because of this extra 24% damage, and you're just going to absolutely ruin their second line with all the AoE damage from Cassana, from Daenerys, from Cersei. It will just mow down anything on the second, third, fourth rows. If you're looking to counter Cassana, by that note, just make sure you're using only one troop type. If you're using a second or third line, this will demolish you. If you're defending like a rally, it might be a good idea to try and evac at least a third or fourth lineup from your castle out. And if you can defend in just one or two troop types, that will probably help your defense quite a lot. So there are some metagaming opportunities she sort of opens up. Yeah, all in all, I think that's pretty much everything touched on. A very, very good commander as you'd expect. And if you see anyone talking about her being underwhelming, I'd probably ask if they're testing it against something like Rebel Groups or UT, where it's just monotype, because you're really going to have to be fighting in scenarios where there are second, third, fourth lines to be able to see the true potential of her.